Stand at the junction of Aldgate High Street and Houndsditch today, and you are walking over 1,000 bodies. Double-decker buses rumble overhead. Tourists photograph the medieval gate fragments preserved in a glass case. Nobody looks down. But rewind 360 years, and you would have found a vast trench carved into the churchyard of Holy Trinity Minories, raw earth exposed, lime burning in the pit, and cartloads of the dead arriving every hour through the September dusk of 1665. Plague. Panic. Mass burial. Silence. Using cutting-edge AI reconstruction, we are about to walk you through every hour of life around the Aldgate plague pit, from the first carts that arrived in the summer of 1665 to the street you can walk today. This is the story of a place where the rituals of death collapsed, where clergymen abandoned their posts, where a city's terror was measured not in prayers but in cubic feet of earth. It is the story of what life was really like when London buried its dead by the thousand, and then paved over the memory. Dawn breaks over Aldgate in August 1665. You wake in a timber-framed house on Aldgate Street, and before you open your eyes you check your own body. Neck. Armpits. Groin. The ritual every Londoner now performs. You search for the swellings, the buboes that mark the plague. Your fingers find nothing. You breathe. Outside, the street is already awake, but it is a strange, muffled waking. No street vendors crying their wares. No apprentices banging shutters open. The usual roar of 60,000 people crammed inside the walls has dropped to a whisper. Aldgate Ward, the easternmost edge of the City of London, has always been loud. It is the gate through which the Colchester Road enters, where carts from Essex unload vegetables, where sailors from Ratcliffe stumble home drunk. But this August, silence spreads like the plague itself. You step into the street. Every 10th door is marked. A red cross painted hastily, still wet in some places. Above it, the words "Lord have mercy upon us" in crude letters. Behind those doors, families are sealed inside by order of the Lord Mayor. A watchman sits on a stool outside each house, paid 40 shillings a month to ensure nobody leaves. Some watchmen sleep. Some take bribes. Some have already fled. The rules are clear: if one person in a household shows signs of plague, the entire family is locked in for 40 days. Food is passed through windows. Bodies are passed out through doors. You walk carefully, avoiding the center of the street where the kennel, the open sewer, runs slick with waste. Normally you would barely notice it. Now every surface feels dangerous. Miasma, the physicians say. Bad air. The plague travels on corrupt vapors rising from filth. You hold a pomander to your nose, a small perforated ball filled with cloves and ambergris. It costs a week's wages, but everyone who can afford one wears it. The poor tie rags soaked in vinegar across their faces. Some chew tobacco constantly, believing smoke purifies the lungs. The bell of Holy Trinity Minories begins to toll. Not the pattern for a funeral. A slow, steady rhythm. The passing bell. It has been ringing since June, and by now Londoners have learned to ignore it, the way you ignore your own heartbeat. But today the rhythm is faster. More dead. Always more dead. By 9 in the morning, Aldgate Market should be thick with buyers. Housewives haggling over mackerel. Cooks selecting capons. Servants filling baskets with turnips and peas. Instead, perhaps 30 people move through the stalls, and they do not haggle. They pay what is asked and leave quickly. The vendors who remain have raised their prices. A loaf of bread that cost a penny in May now costs twopence. A chicken, if you can find one, costs 5 shillings. This is not greed. This is mathematics. Half the bakers have fled to the countryside. Half the fishmongers are dead. Supply collapses while demand remains, and prices rise until only the wealthy can afford to eat well. The poor eat pease porridge and stale bread, and their children grow thin. You are a journeyman shoemaker. Your master died 3 weeks ago, vomiting black bile in the shop while you and the apprentice watched from the doorway, too terrified to approach. The apprentice ran. You stayed, not out of loyalty but because you had nowhere else to go. Now the shop is yours by default, though no customers come. The wealthy have left London. Samuel Pepys notes in his diary that he saw grass growing in the middle of Whitehall. The Duke of Albemarle remains, directing plague orders from the cockpit, but King Charles and his court have fled to Salisbury, then Oxford. Parliament has dissolved. The Royal Exchange is closed. Anyone with money and a country house has abandoned the city, and they have taken the luxury trades with them. No one commissions new shoes during a plague. But you cannot leave. You have no family in the country, no patron to offer you refuge. So you work. You repair old boots brought in by carters and watchmen, the men who cannot afford to stop. You resole the shoes of searchers, the old women paid by the parish to inspect corpses and determine cause of death. They come into your shop and you try not to breathe while they count out pennies with hands that have touched the dead. The money itself might carry plague. Some shopkeepers refuse coin, demanding barter instead. Others wash each coin in vinegar. You do both. At midday, you buy a pie from a vendor near the gate. She stands 10 feet from her customers and places the pies on a stone, then steps back while you approach. You leave coins in a dish of water. She nods. You take the pie and eat it standing in the street, watching the Aldgate entrance. The traffic has slowed to a trickle. A few carts of vegetables. A messenger on horseback, riding fast. And then the dead carts. They begin arriving in late afternoon, rumbling in from Whitechapel and Stepney, from the tenements east of the tower. Each cart is piled with bodies wrapped in sheets, stacked like cordwood. Some sheets are clean. Most are stained. The carter does not look at his cargo. He has tied cloth across his face and he rings a handbell as he drives. Bring out your dead. Bring out your dead. The first carts used to come once a day. Now they come every few hours, and they are never empty. The churchyard of Holy Trinity Minories lies just inside Aldgate, north of the gate itself, a narrow strip of consecrated ground hemmed in by houses. For centuries it has been the parish burial ground, a quiet place of individual graves and carved headstones. By September 1665, it is an industrial site. The plague pit was opened in late August when the parish gravedigger, a man named Thomas Claxton, informed the churchwardens that he could no longer dig individual graves quickly enough. The death rate in Aldgate ward has exceeded 50 per week. The mathematics are simple. A grave takes 4 hours to dig to the required depth of 6 feet. Claxton can dig perhaps 2 graves per day. But 50 deaths per week require 50 graves, and Claxton is one man with a shovel. The churchwardens consult the Lord Mayor's office. The solution is a pit. Not a grave. A trench. They hire a crew of labourers, men desperate enough to work among the dead, and over 3 days in late August they excavate a trench 20 feet long, 12 feet wide, and 12 feet deep. The earth is London clay, heavy and wet. It takes 6 men working in shifts to carve out the hole. When they finish, the pit is blessed by a curate. The rector of Holy Trinity, Dr. Thomas Vincent, has fled to Hertfordshire. Most clergymen have. The few who remain work in rotations, performing mass blessings over pits rather than individual funerals over graves. The first cart arrives on the 28th of August, 1665. 11 bodies. They are tipped into the pit without ceremony. No coffins. Coffins have become impossible to acquire. The Carpenters' Guild has lost half its members, and the wood supply has been requisitioned for pest houses, the isolation hospitals built in the fields north of the city. So the dead go into the pit wrapped in sheets, or in their own clothes, or naked if the family has nothing to spare. The carter and his assistant use long hook poles to drag the bodies to the edge and roll them in. They do not climb down. Nobody climbs down. After the bodies are in, a laborer shovels a thin layer of quicklime over them. Calcium oxide. It is supposed to speed decomposition and suppress the miasma. Mostly it burns the skin off the corpses and creates a caustic white crust. Then a layer of earth. Not enough to cover them. Just enough to mask the sight. The next cart arrives 4 hours later. Then another at dusk. By the end of the first week, the pit holds 60 bodies in layers like a terrible cake. Clay, lime, bodies. Clay, lime, bodies. The rhythm continues. Carts arrive at all hours now. The city has hired men called bearers to collect corpses from sealed houses. They work in pairs, carrying a simple litter between them. When a family signals that a body is ready, usually by hanging a white cloth from a window, the bearers arrive, collect the corpse, add it to a cart, and move to the next house. They are paid 1 shilling per body. Some bearers are criminals released from Newgate on condition they work the carts. Others are men who have already survived plague and believe themselves immune. A few are simply starving and have no other choice. The work destroys them. Henry Morse, a bearer working the Aldgate route, writes in a surviving letter that he begins drinking at dawn to numb himself to the labor. He describes pulling a woman's body from a tenement and finding her infant still alive, tucked into the crook of her arm, nursing at a cold breast. He leaves the child on the doorstep and takes the mother. The child is dead by evening. The pit is full by mid-September. 12 feet deep, every cubic inch packed with bodies. The churchwardens order a second pit opened adjacent to the first. Then a third. By the end of September, Holy Trinity Churchyard is no longer a churchyard. It is a mass grave. On Sunday morning, you stand outside Holy Trinity Church. The door is locked. Services have been suspended since August. The Church of England has published guidelines: no gatherings of more than 10 people. No communal prayer. No singing. The plague, the bishops declare, is a divine judgment upon England's sins. The remedy is repentance and isolation. But isolation is impossible in a city of 300,000. So the rituals of faith collapse. Families pray alone in sealed houses. Those who still attend church gather in the churchyard, standing apart, while a curate reads scripture from the steps. No Eucharist. No hymns. The curate speaks quickly and leaves. You watch him go. He is perhaps 25 years old, pale and thin, wearing a cassock that hangs loose on his frame. He has been here only 3 weeks. The previous curate died on the 1st of September. The previous rector, as mentioned, fled. This boy, for he looks like a boy, was sent by the Bishop of London to tend a parish he does not know, in a city that is dying. You wonder if he will last the month. Across London, religious life fractures along familiar lines. The established church retreats. Nonconformists, Presbyterians, Baptists, Quakers, remain. Thomas Vincent, the rector who fled Holy Trinity, will later write a best-selling account of the plague in which he positions himself as a heroic witness. But the truth, recorded in parish records and diaries, is that many Anglican clergy abandoned their posts while dissenting ministers stayed. Solomon Eccles, a Quaker, walks through London streets naked except for a cloth at his waist, carrying a pan of burning coals on his head, crying repentance. He is arrested twice and released both times because the constables do not want him in their jail. The sects that have been persecuted for decades, those who refuse to use the Book of Common Prayer, who baptized adults instead of infants, who rejected bishops, these groups do not flee. They bury the dead when the parish system fails. They bring food to sealed houses. They sit with the dying. It is a bitter irony not lost on Londoners, and it will reshape English religion in ways that will echo for a century. You yourself have stopped praying. Not out of disbelief, but out of exhaustion. You no longer have the energy to plead with a God who does not appear to be listening. Instead, you follow superstition. You nail a horseshoe above your door. You avoid stepping on cracks in the paving. You cross yourself when a dead cart passes, though you are not Catholic. Magic and faith blur together when reason fails. In the evenings, you see lights in windows across the street, candles lit in patterns, symbols chalked on doorsteps. Old women sell charms, dried toads to wear around the neck, vials of mercury to drink, prayers written on parchment and sewn into hems. The College of Physicians condemns these practices as quackery. But the college's own remedies, bloodletting, purges, the application of live pigeons to buboes, are no more effective. So people buy the charms. They drink the mercury. Some survive. Most do not. And every day, the carts roll toward Aldgate. You have not touched another human being in 6 weeks. This is the loneliness that no one writes about. The plague separates. It turns every person into a potential killer, every embrace into a death sentence. You think of Mary, the baker's daughter on Fenchurch Street. You were courting her before the plague. Walks along the Tower Moat on Sunday afternoons. Stolen kisses in the doorway of her father's shop. You have not seen her since July. You do not know if she is alive. Her father's shop is shuttered, but that might mean they have fled, or it might mean they are sealed inside, or it might mean they are all dead. You do not go to check. Because if you find her alive, you cannot touch her. And if you find her dead, you will have to live with the knowledge that you did not even try to say goodbye. This is how the plague murders families. Not just through infection, but through separation. Husbands desert sick wives, knowing that staying means certain death. Mothers abandon infected children, choosing to save the healthy ones. These choices are not cowardice. They are mathematics. If you have 4 children and one shows plague symptoms, do you stay and watch all 5 of you die? Or do you take the healthy 3 and run, leaving the sick child locked inside with perhaps a neighbor to check on them, perhaps no one at all? The bills of mortality, the weekly death tallies published by the parish clerks, record 11,000 deaths in London during the week of September 12, 1665. Historians believe the true number is closer to 14,000 because many deaths go unreported. The poorest parishes cannot afford searchers. Bodies are buried secretly to avoid quarantine. Entire families die behind locked doors and are not discovered until the smell alerts neighbors. You hear stories. A woman on Mincing Lane gave birth while sealed in her house. The midwife refused to come. The woman's husband delivered the baby himself, cut the cord with a kitchen knife, and wrapped the infant in a sheet. The mother died 2 days later. The husband and baby were released after 40 days. The baby survived. The story spreads through Aldgate like a hymn, because it is the only good news anyone has heard in months. One baby. One survivor. This is what hope looks like now. In the tenements east of the Tower, where the poorest Londoners live crammed 10 to a room, the plague kills entire households in days. These are the sailors, the dockers, the casual labourers who live on bread and onions and have no savings, no country relatives, no escape. When plague enters a tenement, it moves through every room. The bills record streets where 90% of residents die. Some buildings are abandoned entirely, their doors left open, their contents looted. At night, you hear screaming from the sealed houses. Not the screams of pain, though those exist. The screams of madness. People trapped for weeks in rooms with decaying corpses, with sick children, with no food and no hope. Some break their doors and flee into the night. The watchmen are supposed to stop them, but many watchmen have deserted their posts. So the infected wander the streets, delirious, knocking on doors, begging for water. You see one such man stagger past your shop at midnight. He is naked, covered in buboes, and he is singing a hymn in a cracked voice. You bolt your door and do not sleep. The plague announces itself with fever. A sudden, spiking heat that makes your skin burn and your thoughts scatter. Within hours, the headache begins, a pressure behind the eyes so intense that victims describe it as a nail being driven into the skull. Then the nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. The body tries to purge itself, but there is nothing to purge. The infection is already in the blood. By the second day, the buboes appear. Swellings in the lymph nodes, neck, armpits, groin. They begin as hard lumps beneath the skin, tender to the touch. Within hours they swell to the size of eggs, then apples. The skin over them turns black. This is where the plague gets its name, the Black Death, though in 1665 Londoners simply call it the sickness. Some buboes burst on their own, releasing thick pus and blood. Physicians lance them with heated knives, trying to drain the infection. It does not work. The mortality rate for bubonic plague is 60 to 70% even with modern antibiotics. In 1665, without antibiotics, without germ theory, without any understanding of Yersinia pestis, the bacterium that causes plague, the mortality rate in London approaches 90%. If the buboes appear, you will almost certainly die. The only question is how long it takes. Fast cases kill in 2 days. Slow cases take a week. The suffering is extraordinary. Victims describe a thirst that cannot be quenched, a fever that makes them tear off their clothes, a delirium in which they see demons in the corners of their rooms. Caregivers tie patients to beds to prevent them from throwing themselves out of windows. Some victims develop plague pneumonia. The bacteria reach the lungs, and the coughing begins. Blood-tinged sputum. Gasping breaths. Pneumonic plague is even more lethal than bubonic, mortality near 100%, and it is airborne. A single cough can spread infection. When a victim develops pneumonia, even the most devoted family members flee. The final stage is septicemic plague, when the bacteria flood the bloodstream. The extremities turn black as tissue dies. Fingers, toes, the tip of the nose. The victim falls into a coma and dies within hours, their body already decomposing before the heart stops. You have seen all of this. Not by choice. You see it because the searchers bring the news. Agnes Harley, one of the parish searchers for Holy Trinity Minories, stops at your shop most evenings. She is perhaps 60, grey-haired, with hands like tree roots. She has been a searcher for 30 years, long before the plague. She inspects corpses, records the cause of death, and reports to the parish clerk. The job pays 4p per body. This month she has earned more money than in the previous decade. She tells you about the bodies. Not out of cruelty, but because she has no one else to tell. Her husband is dead. Her children fled to Kent in July. She talks, and you listen, because this is the only human contact either of you has. She describes a child whose buboes were so large they tore the skin. A man who died laughing, his mind destroyed by fever. A pregnant woman whose baby was born dead, already marked with plague tokens. Agnes speaks in a flat voice, without emotion. Emotion is a luxury she cannot afford. She finishes her report, accepts a cup of small beer, and leaves. You watch her walk toward the churchyard. Tomorrow she will inspect more bodies. Tomorrow you will listen to more stories. This is intimacy now. Shared horror. The only human connection left. Stand at the corner of Aldgate High Street and Houndsditch today, and you are standing on a pit that holds at least 1,000 dead. The exact number is unknowable. The parish registers for Holy Trinity Minories record 897 burials between August and November 1665, but those are only the deaths officially reported. Historians estimate the true number is 30 to 40% higher. 1,000 bodies. Perhaps 1,200. Laid in clay and lime beneath a street where 3 million people pass each year, and almost none of them know. The pit was closed in late November 1665 when the death rate finally dropped. The churchyard was covered with fresh earth, and grass was planted. For a century, the ground remained consecrated but unused. Then in 1768, Holy Trinity Minories was demolished. The churchyard was sold for development. Houses were built. Then shops. Then offices. The plague pit became a cellar, then a basement car park, then a junction for Victorian saws. In 1987, construction workers excavating for a new building uncovered human remains. Archaeologists were called. They found mass burials. Quicklime. Plague. The site was recorded, then covered again. The building went up as planned. No memorial. No plaque. The dead of Aldgate remain beneath the living city, silent, forgotten, and numberless. A mass grave that refused to stay buried. A reminder that every city street is also a graveyard. London walks over its own history every single day.